So, hello and welcome to the Slackware On podcast. This is season 3 and we're up to episode 8. I'm Stuart Winter, the platform architect and developer for Slackware ARM. And we have Brent Earl, who's also with us. I'm not sure really if you've got a title yet, Brent. Did you make one up yet?
A title?
Yeah, because I've called myself
like
platform architect.
Sir Brent or something.
You could call yourself Sir Brent if you want to.
No, just go by Brent. I don't care.
No. I mean like the job title. No.
Oh yeah.
I'm not saying you sort of promote yourself socially to be a sir or or a knight. Knight Brent. I don't really think those things exist in the US anyway, do they? You can't be
no,
you can't be a sir or a knight in the US, I'm afraid. It's only over here, and even then, don't know if that's going to happen. Anyway, let's not talk about that. But Brent hasn't created himself a title, so we'll call you. I don't know. You could be
Minion 1.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Call you that. Well, I've Oh, okay. That's gone a bit wonky at the top there, but I've updated the title card there, and because this is the Slackware ARM channel, as I said, and it's really a channel we're talking about using Slackware on the ARM platform, and most recently on the ARM64 or AArch64 platform, as it's called. So yeah, we're building and maintaining that port of Slackware, and we're talking about it in this channel. And I wonder, Brent, whether I should only share the VirtualBox image, because otherwise we might get some people saying, "You're calling yourself a Linux guy, you heretic! Look, you're using Mac OS.
You're running OS X.
Slackware in a VM."
That's okay. I dual boot OpenBSD, so that's kind of bad too.
Well, this is my work computer. It's the only one that has Skype on, which happens to use Mac OS. But I definitely do run Slackware natively everywhere.
You have to wipe it and put Slackware on it.
Well, actually, so this brings me to one of the things that I've got. I do have an agenda for the first time in a while. So I have an agenda this time. And one of the items on there is, well, there's a couple of things. The first one is that there's been a few comments, well, literally a few, there's not many, but of the few comments that there are, I just want to point out that I'm not going to be replying to the comments in YouTube videos. I'm going to leave them open because, why not? But the reason I'm not going to reply to them when you're asking questions about, does Slackware support this or that, is simply because that kind of information needs to be kept in a central location, and the official location for Slackware, for the Slackware community, is on linuxquestions.org. So I know it does mean signing up to register for an account, but if you're interested in the project and you want to ask questions, that's the place to do it, because otherwise you have stuff all over the place and that doesn't really help anyone in the end. So that said, that was one of the things. And the other about the MacOS link, or the Mac link, was somebody had been asking whether it supports, whether you could run Slackware on the ARM64 or Apple M1 machines. In fact, I've had my hands on an Apple M1 at work, but it was literally my hands on. Like, I actually touched their laptop and went, "Ooh, it's like mine, but it's heavier."
Yeah.
And I'm going to make mine. Now, one of the questions, so I had a couple of people email me as well, and I did reply to those about this. My question was, why would you put Slackware on an Apple M1? I mean, as much as I love Slackware, I wouldn't put it on there just because it's not tuned for that device. I mean, maybe in the future it'll be really good, but I wouldn't. But the response I got to that from both people was, "Oh, I'm running it in an emulator." I'm like, "Oh, all right, fine."
Oh.
Or some kind of virtualized environment. I was like, "Okay, well, that makes sense. I'm with you on that one." But nonetheless, so some people have have found their way to do that. And I had one particularly interesting email, I think from Andrew Clemens, can't remember, sorry. I think that's your name anyway. And he, in particular, he was looking at running, well, he's working on slackbuilds.org actually, So he's building some packages, he maintains them there. And one of the things that he found was that the glibc, or glibc in Slackware ARM was built for a much more recent kernel, i.e. the one that it was actually first publicly released with, which is what, 5.17 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, how do I summarize this? Basically, that it was incompatible. The way glibc was built, well, glibc being built for that kernel was incompatible with older environments that required Linux 5.4. And I thought, what kind of older environments exactly are you talking about? So we had a discussion about that. And I found yesterday, as I was busy doing something for work, that AWS actually has the ability to spin up instances on ARM64 hardware. No one had ever told me about this.
Yeah,
Didn't know. That. So, oh, okay. Well, I didn't know about that. But then I thought, well, I'm not really sure what I would do with that. And I didn't look at it any further. I just saw it in the interface. I was busy setting something else up. But anyway, that was quite an interesting thing. But yeah, please, on the comment side, if questions, just ask them on the forum. That's the best place, because I'm not also the only one that can answer the questions. But I am generally one of the ones that can reply authoritatively to various things. There is another point as well on here. What was it? The Mac stuff. Oh yeah. So one of the questions on there's a link here with a Mac as well. One of the questions was in the YouTube comments was that somebody wanted to upgrade, or rather wanted to customize the Slackware kernel for the Pinebook. No, for the Pine phone, for the Pine 64's Pine phone. So I've actually updated the Slackware kernel customization document to include a note about this. But basically, you can't just the kernel support is one piece of making Slackware support another hardware model, as we call them. So a hardware model is like a Pinebook Pro, it's a Raspberry Pi. That's an example of a hardware model. Just adding some extra support in the kernel, if indeed any at all is required for the Pine phone. I don't know if it probably is, but it may not be. Even if it was, that's only a piece of it, because actually you need to go and update all the kernel module loader scripts and all that kind of stuff to match on that particular hardware and load the right modules, load the right drivers, if you like. So there's quite a bit of work to do. It's not as simple as just like it on the x86. Oh look, I need a particular bit of hardware, like a SCSI card. Let's compile it in or whatever. It doesn't work like that. There's a bit more work to do. So yeah, sorry about that, but you're gonna have to go and figure it out. But there is the direct integration guide isn't complete, but it's it kind of gives. I think it covers all of the components, but it's just not very well organized right now. So at some point, maybe probably next year or around Christmas, if like like I get really bored, I might hack on it and update it. But yeah, that's the answer to that question. It's not as straightforward as just customizing the kernel and recompiling it. You will have to do a bit of work. But that said, if people are interested in that kind of thing, I can prioritize it, finishing off that direct integration document as well. What else? There's a few. I have quite a few things on the list actually, because it's been a while since we spoke, wasn't it? In fact, it's been ages since we actually had a call. Since
quite a while.
June or something like that, maybe July. I don't know. Yeah. So I've covered that one. Covered that. Of course. So one of the most important things I probably should have started out with earlier is that thanks. Okay, so due to me and my stuff, the build infrastructure being in Europe, and most people are probably already aware of this, but the prices of electricity, particularly, I know it's the same in Europe, but in the UK where all the stuff is, it's over double what it was before. Like it's incredibly expensive now. And I've never, ever once thought about, I've never really given it a second thought in the 20 years I've been running this stuff about how much it costs to run it on the electricity point of view. It's just background noise on the bill. We just don't even notice it. But I do notice it now. So I published, well, rather I just posted a note to the Linux Questions forum, just asking if anyone wants to help contribute to that. That would be most appreciated. And within, I think on the same day, I had a few people either increase their Patreon donation or pay directly with PayPal. So thanks a lot for that. That has really helped. I'm not sure what I'm going to do going forwards though, actually, because it does cost quite a bit of money to run this stuff. It's not just the ARM stuff either. It's like the x86 that I need to run, and some switches and all that kind of other stuff. So yeah, I'm not sure what I'll do about that. But if you guys want to contribute some more to pay for the electricity, that would be quite good. Like, it's not even to buy any new hardware. I've kind of got enough of that at the moment. I'll talk more about that later as well. But yeah, it's really to actually pay for the electricity. Do you know what I'd love to do though, Brent? I had this idea as I was like thinking about this. I was like, you know what would be brilliant is imagine if everything was in a warm country. So I should take all this stuff back to Spain perhaps and just plug it into a solar panel.
Yeah, right.
Just take it to the woods in a little village or something with because they've got fiber, even in the smallest villages in the Nevada region. You've got like there's fiber to these little villages. Like in the UK, these little villages are still using dial-up, in the UK, but in Spain, no, there's fiber to the premises. So yeah, I could do it that, and I could just run it and from solar. I'd love that. That would be
charge up some fuel cells and
over. That'd be the utopia. But anyway, alas, it isn't. It's currently in the overcast UK. And actually, because I spent so much time in Spain, this is obviously nothing to do with Slackware, so apologies. But when I was in Spain, I'd been there for quite a while, and I came back to the UK, and it was like, how can I describe it? It was like. It was as if I felt as if the end of the world was nigh. I came back from the intensity of the sun is so much. It's so much stronger, and I got used to it. But I come back here, and it's like the sun is just dying, like on its last breath. Like it's still sunny, but it just feels like the sun's given up. It's like bye.
Yeah, winter's coming.
Yeah, I'd never noticed that before, because usually I don't spend so long. Over there. Anyway, so alas, anyway, the electricity is expensive. So if you can donate, that would be appreciated. What else is on the list? Oh yeah, so I've been busy today. It's actually Akamai gives everyone a few wellness days a year, which basically means a free holiday. So I've been for a bike ride, and I've been doing a bit of Slackwaring. So I've been biking and Slackwaring. And I've been picking up merging in some of the latest changes. And I wanted to show you something because I stumbled across it earlier when actually, you know what? I should probably really maximize this because it's going to make it. Hold on a sec. Tell you what, let's just full screen it. Oh, right. Okay. Well, let's leave it like that. Okay, you can still see that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just edit it out later.
The text is big enough. It's fine.
Is it big enough? All right then.
Yeah.
I'll just crop it later in the edit suite. All right. So I want to show you something. So here I was. I looked at I set a load of stuff building, and I came back to find the mini route had failed, and it had seg faulted during the creation, and I thought, oh no. It must be whenever something seg faults, it's always something's got corrupted. Well, not always, but recently it's been because something is corrupted. And I was like, oh, the disk must be broken again. Oh. So I imagined, just imagine having to walk over to the things and get a new disk and reinstall. So I checked. No, it wasn't the disk. Okay. Oh God, it must be worse. It must be the NFS server. The x86 box is broken. No, that's not broken either. So I was like, what? How is it? So I started digging into it. Let me just show you what happened. So if I go to lib64 and I do, okay, let me just show you it works, right? Watch, works, yeah? So I've run bash and the shell, I have a shell. I quit bash and I'm back to the parent shell, right? So if I do this, what was it? enus.utf8, right? And then do it again. Oh, look.
Oh.
Right. So then if I don't need to do that. So if I move it back again, bash, and it works. So what was happening was, so for example, so what happened is if I do yeah, so if I do say /tmp, so if I unpack, oh, this is something else I can say as well. Actually, it's not. So if I unpack the kernel, the operating system initial RAM disk, because I started getting worried when I saw the mini root was broken. I was like, the mini root, what? Hang on a minute, what? Because these are kind of similar. Some of the packages, there's a reasonable amount of overlap, and I was thinking, what happened? Something bad has happened here. So if I root into this, oh look, seg fault. So I was thinking, hang on a minute, hang on, what's happened here? So I can't root into the operating system initial RAM disk from the OS. So then I unpacked the installer, and I couldn't root into that either. And I was like, this is bad news. So then I did the most obvious thing. I did sort of, and I was like, oh look, grep works. Interesting. Okay. So what has happened there? So then I thought, okay, so it can't be chroot that's broken. So this was like the first level of debugging. There was no kind of complexity here. So there's that's broken. So I was like, well, okay. So what happens if I do? Oh, actually, hang on a minute. If I do, it's in bin, isn't it? / Goodness me, I can't type today. Does that actually work? Yeah. Okay. So what did I do next? I was doing. How did I do this? Oh, I know. Yeah. So. So this still doesn't work. Right? Oh yeah, okay. I mean, if I can just be more explicit like that. But okay, so bin bash take seg fault. So then I did ddb -- args chroot run, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's seg faulting, and it's been reported from this function here in glibc. Then I thought, well, hang on, why? Okay, so basically, I looked into this a little bit more. And I found my way to the locale. So I was just hacking around them, and that's how I showed you first.
Yeah.
So I found that, and I was like, but that doesn't make. I was thinking it can't be a bug in glibc, because otherwise everything would break. Surely, what is? So I thought, okay, it's only bash. So I started digging into it, and I found a workaround to begin with. But then I thought, well, actually, I should just fix it, I suppose. I got a bit carried away into it. So then I thought, so I looked at Fedora's repo and saw, and sure enough, they have a patch whose description and code looked like it would fix this exact problem. With the lower once I'd figured out the locale, that moving the locale in and out was a workaround. And then, so I had a look at what Slackware. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll just introduce the patch that I found in Fedora into Slackware. And then I found, oh look, here is exactly the patch to fix the problem that I found. Because I was like, hang on a minute, why is the patch, why is it not applied? I was like, then I realized that there was actually a bug in the bash build script for Slackware ARM, where it just wasn't finding the patches in the Slackware 64 source tree. So that took me a bit of time to figure that one out. But I've rebuilt bash, and now it works with this patch. So I'm now going to rebuild the Linux 5.19 kernel, having said that the previous version would probably be the last, but it's not. So I'm going to rebuild the kernel so that the initRD and the installer has a patched bash. Although the funny thing is, when I actually boot the installer, which has the same version of bash in it as the one that's on this machine that you're looking at, it works fine. Yet the locale is not there. It's got the same glibc, the same. So there must be something else that's triggering it. But I didn't know. I didn't look into it any further. But I just found that's why it took so long to figure out what was wrong, because I was like, well, hang on, why does it the same stuff, but it works in that environment, but it doesn't work in the OS. But basically, at the moment, if you'd install Slackware ARM without the glibc internationalization package, your machine isn't going to boot, dude.
Oh man.
So luckily, You know, we do say to do a full install so everything would work. But yeah, if you chose not to install that, it wouldn't work, as evidenced by the mini root build. But yeah, I've no idea why it worked in the OS initRD. It worked in the installer. But anyway, the patch is applied now, and I'm going to rebuild the latest 5.19 kernel as well, just to get the new version of Bash in there. There are a few other things. Oh yeah, so I said, I've realised it is me just doing all the talking, Brent. We've got some stuff to talk about with the Honeycomb later on as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so the other thing I realised, I don't know what I was doing now, but I was doing some, I think I was just doing some tests on, oh, I know what it was. I was doing something with Linux docs tool, the Linux doc tools package in Slackware, because I maintain that one, and I was wanting to see if there's anything, any new components to update in it. There weren't at the time, which was about a few weeks ago. So I don't know why I was doing this, but for some reason I repackaged the x86 initial RAM disk by hand. And on the x86, it uses, we compress the OS, well, it's not called the OS initRD in x86, it's just the initRD, but we compress that with LZMA using the XZ tool. And so I repacked it manually, like I always do on ARM, but ARM uses gzip. And my x86 wouldn't boot after I'd rebooted it with the new initRD. And I thought, huh? I haven't changed anything that should cause it to boot, not to boot. So I looked inside the installer build script and then realized that I'd missed off an option to XZ, which is something like -CRC32. And it occurred to me, I thought, hold on a minute. This probably is why I couldn't get the initial RAM disks working on ARM with LZMA compression, because I didn't, when I built them, I didn't add that command in, I know for a fact. So I thought, oh, it got me thinking, I wonder how easy it would be to migrate the OS initRD and the installer to LZMA, or use XZ compression. So I started thinking how I would actually build a transition path for that. And then I thought it just sounded too hard, so I stopped thinking about it. Because it'd be quite a bit of work, I think, to facilitate that. I don't know. To be honest, there's no point really. It kind of would be better if we ever start running low on RAM. We could probably squeeze a couple of megabytes back, or realize a few megabytes by using XZ, which would be helpful because it would just take up less RAM when it's initially loaded into RAM, and then it decompresses elsewhere. But so that would save us. But I don't think that's going to be an issue, to be honest. If it does, I guess I'll look at it. But yeah, so I was like, oh, okay. So I could probably fix that at some point. Right. And then, okay, cool. So we've kind of covered a few things. Oh yeah, on the electricity front as well. So I had this other idea, and I suddenly thought, okay, how could I stop using so much electricity? Because I've already switched off the remainder of all but one of the x86 64 machines in the cluster that run distcc with the cross compiler to speed up the building for the port. So I'd already switched off all of those, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I could, perhaps do it in the cloud. So I started thinking, because so Akamai but the Akamai bought linode.com, which is a cloud, which is like a really sort of open source, user-friendly cloud platform. It does really well with the primitives like storage, compute, and that kind of stuff. And Akamai have kindly, well, basically, I asked a few people, can you just give us some compute for our open source project? And they said, yes, of course. And so we got that. Although that does help, because that's generally because I work there, so I just ask the right people. But nonetheless, we've been given, as the Slackware project has been given some compute on Linode. So I thought, what about if I stood up some high performance machines inside of Linode that I could then distcc out to from my ARM machines over the internet? And then I thought, well, actually, even if I did, is that really going to work well over the internet? I mean,
it's just going to be a bottleneck.
Yeah, because of the amount of data that you're going to be pumping over even with fiber where there's 70 megs a second uplink. I mean, yeah, egress uplink, and then whatever, a few hundred megs down or whatever. The down speed is okay, but yeah, it would be a bottleneck just pushing it up to the cloud. It doesn't make any sense. It would just take longer, I think, and just burn my internet line. So I thought I'm not going to do that. But I thought, oh well, actually, maybe we could do. I don't know. And then I was looking into, because Linode doesn't currently support virtual private clouds, but apparently it will at some point. Akamai is looking at building that. I don't know if they've advertised that publicly. So if they haven't, then don't say that you heard it here. But anyway, so we should be adding that in at some point, because I'd kind of need that.
OpenVPN.
Huh?
Just use OpenVPN.
Yeah, but I don't want in Linode. You get given a public IP. It's kind of like the default. Whereas actually, I want a private network that I can access remotely. Like that's kind of what you do in Amazon. Now, Amazon, it has that. That's the standard approach, and then you set up the external stuff. Well, it's not. It depends how you configure it, but like that's kind of the general approach. Whereas Linode is kind of like, it's like analogous to, like the early 90s or mid 90s to early 2000s, where you'd rock up at a colo facility with your machine in your hand, and they would go and you go and put it in a rack and bolt it in and put an Ethernet cable in, and then they give you your public IP details and all of that, and you configure it on your interface, and it's kind of like that, but it's virtual. So you get, it's kind of, you're on the internet, and if you want to build something, if you want to take up yourself half a rack or a full rack, that's up to you. Here, maybe we'll give you a I don't know, /20, I don't know, 28 or something, give you an IP range, and then you've got that half a cabinet, do whatever you want with it. So it's kind of, it's not there. Linode isn't on that part. It's on the bring your own server and stick it in a rack kind of thing. So we haven't got the VPC stuff yet, but then, yeah, nonetheless, it would still take ages to, yeah, I think it would just be a bottleneck as well. But I did get excited about it momentarily. Right. Oh, yeah. I found out what I was just looking at my notes, actually. The reason why I found the XZ thing with the initial RAM disk was actually because I repacked the installer. Somebody had found on the forum, sorry, I've forgotten your name because it was ages ago, but somebody had found on the forum that if you was to do with the enumeration of the SD card or MMC devices on the Raspberry Pi. It was, what was he trying to, I can't remember what he's trying to do now, but basically it was the SD card, the partitions on the SD card were showing up like 3 or 4 times or something like that. They were being duplicated. So I fixed it and then tested the fix in x86 before passing it over to Patrick. And that's why I repacked the NetRD. So yeah, thanks for reporting that bug. That got fixed. That's been in there for quite a while. Oh, hello. Right. So Brent has had another good idea, or I think it was your idea anyway, of an all-in-one installer, and where basically you'd have, in the same way as we already have SD card images for the supported hardware models. So you have the way you install Slackware is you download this image of a few hundred megs, and then you unpack it to you basically dump it onto your SD card, and then you boot off of the SD card, and then it boots into the Slackware installer, and then one of the partitions on it gets converted into your OS, your /boot partition on the operating system, and then you install the Slackware media itself, i.e. all of the packages. There's different installation options as there always has been in Slackware. Like, and you can install them off NFS, you can do it over HTTP, you can put a USB stick in there with it and all that kind of stuff. And your idea was to have a separate partition on which, on that same SD card or in that same SD card image, you'd have a separate or a third, an additional partition that would contain all of the Slackware tree. And so when you boot it up, the installer would detect the presence of that partition and say, hey, I see you've got the Slackware all-in-one installer. Do you want to install it from there? Or in fact, it wouldn't even offer the option to install from anywhere but the installer. sorry, the partition, which I think is my preference if we do that.
Yeah.
But I think that's a pretty good idea, which can just be done for release time. Because again, like, the thing is that the smallest SD card, you can even buy is probably, I mean, you can buy small ones, but what's the point when they're the same price as buying a large one, a large capacity SD card? So they're basically the same price. So you may as well just buy a large one, and then we'd only need what, 5? What's the Oh, is this machine not actually on? Oh yeah, there we go. Forgot the slash. Okay, yeah. So we need what? A couple of gigs, probably 16 gig minimum SD card, something like that.
Yeah.
How big slash? Oh, I resized it, didn't I? So forgotten now. Is it something like? Oh, forgotten. 4 gig or something. Anyway, yeah. For slash boots, I think it's usually. I'd have to check the code now. What the things were. Yeah, but basically, we could probably just provide an image that was about 10 gigs in size or something like that, and you download that and then install directly off of it. The only thing, there's a few things I was thinking about though, how that would work in terms of resizing and stuff like that. Would you be offered to resize that partition as well, or because that's extra code for me to code and that kind of stuff? But yeah, let us know on the forum. In fact, you can let us know in the comments on that one, because that's just a yes or a no. You don't need to ask. If you want to ask any questions about it, use the forum. But yeah, if you like the idea of us providing a single SD image at release, so only for Slackware releases, I'm not going to do this for current. Maybe once or twice I'll put it out just for people to test it. But it's just huge and it takes ages to build. So yeah, if you think that's a good idea for releases, so you just have a single SD image, you DD it, you put it on your SD card, you boot it, and then the installer, it's installed off of the SD image to your USB drive or SSD or whatever, to your target storage. Yeah, let us know in the comments on the forum if you think that's a good idea, and I can put a bit of time.
Maybe even have like the installer remove that partition after the installer has been removed too. Because it doesn't make sense to have that extra partition with all the packages without the installer RAM disk. I don't know, just something I was thinking about.
What do you mean?
So like, how you have it offering to delete the installer during the install process?
Oh yeah.
You could remove that partition too. I don't know, just with people.
No, I see. Oh, I hadn't thought of that actually. I don't think I'd do that. I'm not sure removing a partition is a great idea during the installation process.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I don't know.
It could.
I meant like after you're done using it, sort of thing. But
well, that's. I don't know. My thought was to resize it, to offer to resize such a partition instead. So instead of resizing /boot, because realistically /boot's like it's by default, yeah, it's something like 4 gigs or something like that. I can't remember actually. Where is this stuff stored? Where is it? Is it in here? Is it in the other one? I feel like it's been ages.
Yeah, I don't know where everything is anymore either.
Yeah. Let's see. Where is the code for this stuff? I mean, I can't believe how much code was required to actually make this work. I did write it all down though. Well, it's probably going to find. Oh, here we go. Yeah, 4 gig. Yeah. So /boot is basically 4 gig in size, and that's enormous anyway. There's no way that you would ever actually need a 4 gig /boot, but it's just to accommodate for extra kernels and faffing around and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the logic. Yeah, so my plan was to sort of offer to resize the installation media partition rather than /boot, because that way you can still use it for something if you want to, and it also means that if you want to, I mean, you could use it, for example, to download or to as your installation tree or your upgrade tree, so you could use it to sync the latest patches and stuff onto it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't know. it's yeah, probably not removing it though. I don't think I would do that. I think that's you could cause
it could cause
issues.
problems. Yeah,
I think so. It'd be too complicated of a thing to do. I mean, it's doable. You could do it in a shell script if you wanted to, but yeah, I wouldn't go that route. But probably just resizing it, or doing nothing with it, just not even mounting it and just leaving it there, which is another option. If people want to use it, they want to use it. I don't know. I'll look into it once I figure out how to even where I would go about building that. But yeah, back to the point. If you guys think that's if you like the idea of that, an all-in-one installer that includes the package set, let us know in the comments or on the forum, and I'll add it to the to-do list. So I talked about that. So let's have a quick. Oh yeah, what's going on there? Yeah. Let's have a quick look at the installer. Let's have a look at the forum rather. Talking about. Oh yeah. Let's have a look at this one first. So this one, the Pinebook Pro, I've looked at the Manjaro repo. Okay, so basically the SPI flashing tool, well, the SD card image apparently doesn't work on newer than mine Pinebook Pros. I've looked at the Manjaro patch repo for U-Boot. They've got the same version of U-Boot as we have in Slackware, but they do have an additional patch, and it is about the MMC subsystem, so it's related to SD cards. So what I've done is I've rebuilt U-Boot to include that latest patch, and I've tested it already. I've already flashed my Pinebook Pro and my Rock Pro 64 with it, and it works. So I just need to rebuild the SPI flashing images and then test them and then push everything out. And if hopefully that will work, I don't know if it doesn't work, what it is. There isn't though, there is a newer version of U-Boot than the one that we have, but the last time I tested it, there was something wrong with it. I can't remember what it was, but it didn't work on either the Rock Pro 64 or, well, one of the three, either the Raspberry Pi 4 or one of them or something. It didn't work anyway, and I tested it. So at the moment, there's no good reason to switch to a newer version, particularly when for the Raspberry Pi 4, U-Boot works fine, the version we have. And for the Pinebook Pro and the Rock Pro 64, we're using the same one as Manjaro, and Manjaro is what comes shipped on the Rock Pro 64, well, on the Pinebook Pro anyway. So given that there's no good reason to change that version or go beyond the version that Manjaro are using, just use that. That's my attitude. Yeah. So it's easier that way.
Don't create more bugs.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no point in changing it. So hopefully, though, this new version of the SPI flashing image will boot, and then it can flash. Oh, the other thing I meant to put in there. I know this is something you know about, but I need to put in the documents, if it's not already, the installation guide, to make sure that all USB devices, particularly storage, are disconnected from the Rock Pro 64 and the Pinebook Pro before you boot the SPI flashing image. Because the Manjaro U-Boot also includes a patch that switches the boot order to prefer USB. So if it gets itself into a state thinking it can boot off one of your USB devices, then that's bad news. I haven't taken that patch in Slackware because I don't see the need to boot off USB. I mean, you could, do that, but I don't want to do that. We're booting off a SD card, but I say that because it could be that one of the reasons why it won't boot is because you've got something in the USB port. So pull it out and try that. But nonetheless, I'll update the documentation. In fact, I'll make a note of that now to do that, to make that a note. Highlighted notes. What do you call them in documents? It's called admonitions, isn't it? I'll make an admonition, which is one of those nice colourful boxes that says, "Hey, you should really read me." Do you know what though, Brent? Right. So this is not. I mean, you can't make this up, right? A while ago, someone emailed me. I don't know who you are, and that's probably a good thing. I don't remember. So they said, "Oh, this doesn't work," and I said, "Well, it says that in the warning notes, like in the documentation that you're referring to." And they said, "Yeah. Oh, I didn't read that. I don't read the warnings." Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I suggest that you do. I rate it for a reason. I don't waste my time writing things that are not worth reading. well,
It's
that's
like
my
blurred out for some people, so like can't even see it.
Yeah, you must actually read it, right? So anyway, let me make a note of that. USB stuff. But yeah, anyway, back to the point. Yeah, hopefully that fixes it. But if not, I have no idea. Let's just quickly have a look at the forum. See if there's, whoa. Oh, I need to log in here to get rid of the ads, don't I? But I guess we're helping out Linux questions by having the ads pop up. What else is there? Oh yeah, so Linux, I'm going to get rid of a bunch of these. I've asked Jeremy, one of the moderators, to get rid of a bunch of these sticky things because they're superfluous. They're really old stuff now. What else is there? So yeah, ARH64. When are we going to switch over to Linux 6? It depends on when Patrick does it. Really, it's simply because there's at least one package that needed a patch to build against Linux kernel headers. Sorry, Linux 6 kernel headers, and I don't really fancy getting into a situation that needs a patch because of that. And I've got no particularly good, compelling reason to move to Linux 6 at the moment. But everything is ready and waiting in the source repo to go with that when we want to. And I have tested it on the Raspberry Pi 4, and you've tested it on all of them, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, but
yeah.
I moved back because it's just more maintenance to keep.
Yeah, there's no need to move to it. Oh, and you said as well, didn't you? You got the VC4 driver. Was it working, but it crashes on the Raspberry Pi 4?
It has some kind of bug where I think it runs out of memory, or there's a memory leak or something. Okay. And over time, the video gets worse.
Oh, right. It gets worse? What do you mean?
Yeah, and there's like a seg fault later on. I don't have a log file for it, but it's like the word that they put in there was SWIOTOB. There's some kind of bug with that component.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but see, I might have a bookmark.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter. Well, once we get around to the Linux 6.0 release, once it's in Slackware x86, I'll look at it then. There's no.
It says SD leaks and DMA buffers. So okay. That's for the Raspberry Pi only, though.
Okay. You know, I wanted to take a moment to talk about this Raspberry Pi stuff because it's kind of I think most of the people in the community that are users of the product, you know, of the OS rather than developing on it, don't really kind of grasp what is going on with the Raspberry Pi and how. Okay, you know, feel free to give me your opinion on this, Brent. But my opinion is that the way that the Raspberry Pi developers work is analogous to saying, you know, I'm just going to pick Dell here because my monitor is made by Dell, so they're the first that come to mind. But let's say we're in the x86 world, and you want this particular Dell computer. It doesn't matter which Dell it is. It could be any Dell, any of their huge array of machines. You want to run Linux. You want to run Linux on your Dell. And in order to do so, though, the Linux distributor, the developers of the distribution you want to use, so whether it's Slackware, whether it's Fedora, Arch, Gentoo, Debian, Ubuntu, what other ones are there? There are some others. I don't know. Those are the ones I can remember. Right. The people that develop that, guess what they're going to have to do? They're going to have to build. They're going to have to go and take the Linux source from a fork. They're going to have to build it. They're going to have to maintain a separate kernel config, separate installation testing, separate code base for certain things, separate testing, like basically just a separate kernel just to run on Dells. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine in the x86? Oh yeah, here's the kernel for Dells. Like no one would put up with that, and that's like, but that's exactly what it's like with the Raspberry Pi, simply because. But whilst there's support upstream now, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, it works really well. To me, the video is still lacking, but it does work. But that's been a hell of a long time coming. But even like when I worked on the the kernel customization document, which includes how to build from the Raspberry Pi kernel fork, I was shocked at just how much extra hardware is supported by their kernel fork versus what's in the mainline community kernel. It wasn't just a couple of things, it was like 30 or something like that. And then here's the other example, like the VC4 driver's not working, but they're fixing, okay, fine, they're fixing it in their own kernel. But it seems to me that they're really just focusing on getting it all working for their own operating system first, whereas actually that really isn't how it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to just take everything and use it in your own. I mean, what you do, I mean, that's not true. That is how it works, but you contribute it back to the upstream kernel in this case, because then, I'm not going to go and build another kernel just for the Raspberry Pi. That's ridiculous. Like, it's just, you're just a piece of hardware to me. You need to include your patches in the upstream kernel, because that way, all of the other distributions people would find the bugs more readily and probably fix them for Raspberry Pi. So what it seems to be really doing, because none of the other distributions like Red Hat or Fedora and Debian and so on, they don't provide, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have checked and I don't think they do. They don't provide separate kernels in the main distribution just for the Raspberry Pi. It's also like saying, oh yeah, we need a special version of Firefox just for the Raspberry Pi. Like, come on. I mean, it's okay with it, like providing a bit of software that happens to, provide a library to access the GPIO. Okay, that's fine, because that's just for that device. I don't actually have a problem with that. But having a general kernel, a generic kernel, or generic Firefox, basically everything, and it should run on every piece of hardware if it's supposed to. And if it doesn't, the vendor of that should work to get it supported upstream like everyone else does. I mean, it just seems to me that their development model is restricting their customer choice, because, if you want to install something that's not their own distribution, great, you're going to have to go to the extra work, or basically you're either going to have to do a bit of extra work to make it work on it, or you're not going to have access to all the available hardware, even though they've already got all the support for it in their own kernel. I don't know what the plans are. I don't look at them. I'm not interested in them really. But, all I can look at is the results and go, actually, really, maybe you should work a bit more upstream. I don't know. Anyway, that's my. I mean, I'm saying this from someone, and this includes Brent, but I'm not going to speak for you. But like knowing that what we've talked about before, I just think like you make it for I'm just some guy that's got some hardware from the Raspberry Pi. I bought the Raspberry Pi. Just like any other person on the planet, and I want to get the open source, the community version of the software working, but I can't do it that well because you don't really support it very well. That's actually the truth. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Because of the way they do it, I just don't know why they keep up with that. I mean, most of the time, like the Raspberry Pi, the people, I'd imagine they would want to install a distribution like Fedora, like Fedora, like Slackware, like Debian, whatever your particular favorite flavor is. I don't care which one it is. I couldn't care less what anyone uses. The only thing I care about is actually, I don't want to use the Raspberry Pi one. I want to use the one that I want. I didn't buy a Raspberry Pi to run your own Raspberry Pi distribution on it. I want to run my favorite one that I run on the x86. But yeah, I don't know. I'd really love to know why they do that. To me, they'd save themselves a whole bunch of cost if they just partnered with, say, Red Hat, or they partnered with Ubuntu. I mean, obviously they can't partner with me, but they could partner with those guys and say, because we, for example, Akamai partners with Ubuntu. We use Ubuntu in some of our products that we ship. And we have an agreement with them. They could do the same. And Ubuntu, all of the people that I know that worked at Canonical, that I knew from my Red Hat days, they're all open source people. They get what's going on. They understand what it is they're working with. And so they work to get that support upstream. So maybe they could handle that for them. I don't know. Save them a bit of bother. I don't know. Anyway, that's my rant over with the Raspberry Pi. I'm not, as a user, I'm not happy with it. I don't.
Yeah, and it's difficult when people compare Slackware on the Raspberry Pi to other distros, because it's very sporadic, the support. So maybe something works somewhere else, but not here. And obviously Debian's going to have better support because they're associated with the Raspberry Pi, because it's forked basically. But
no, that's what I'm saying. It's not though, is it? Because unless they've
no,
taken a whole bunch of patches and put it in their generic kernel, which I
yeah,
don't think that they have, because I did check recently, and certainly that I know that Fedora had got some patches in there, but generally they hadn't actually for a long time. There was no Raspberry Pi patches at all for 5.18 or 5.17, if I remember rightly, because I'd
yeah.
looked at these
I
things.
don't know why they wait so long, but
Well, I guess for the same reason, because like where do you know, unless the Raspberry Pi developers are actually going to get their support into the mainline kernel, like you're just not going to bother keeping up with that stuff. Whereas everything else it works. Like
yeah,
no
I
actual,
think they were on the 5.10 kernel for a long time.
I don't know. It just seems to me, Brent, that it's just like another Android. The Raspberry Pi is another Android. It just seems like it's
Yeah,
feeding
yeah,
off of the ecosystem. It doesn't contribute
that's
back
true.
too much. But I mean, I might be wrong. Feel free to correct me. But that's my experience from actually working on it using the upstream
Yeah,
materials. But
it's
yeah,
true, pretty
um,
much.
yeah, I I'm glad that we've got it working. But it's like it just doesn't seem very stable, the support in it, and I just it's kind of a semi-regret, the Raspberry Pi, to be
It,
honest.
yeah, every day I wake up and cross my fingers when I go to the forums, hoping there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah. But anyway, it's on the flip side though. I've also stopped because it didn't. Basically, there was a bug in the some of the Raspberry Pi support for the Yeah, I think it was the SD card, wouldn't it? One of the versions of Linux 5.18, maybe it just quit working
yeah,
after one of the minor releases of 5.18. The SD card just disappeared,
yeah.
or something like that. Anyway, it's like okay. So I thought,
It
okay, we'll just
disappears, and then if it doesn't time out,
yeah,
it'll eventually start working. But it's
yeah,
pretty iffy depending
yeah,
on what else you have plugged into the computer and stuff.
yeah.
So I don't know.
But I just find it's just holding the project back a bit. But at the moment, it's not too bad. But I did go through that period. Thought like I could just cut this. If this was something other than the Raspberry Pi, I'd just go, you know what, come back. We'll pick it up
Yeah.
later when you've got your stuff together. But anyway, that's my rant over on Raspberry Pis. I've finally ranted about them. What else is in the forum? Someone wants to do is interested if there's Raspberry Pi, if there's AR. Oh yes, ARM are now calling ARM 32. They are actually calling it ARch 32, so they've retroactively renamed it. I thought that was quite funny. Oh right, yeah. So that's cool if someone wants to pick up the pieces of that. But don't. But if you do, don't put it on the Slackware forum because that's for Slackware, not other projects that are
Yeah.
for that. But that's cool if someone wants to do that. Um, oh yeah, Brent, come on. So this RPI 400. I think we've fixed that. Oh no, that's yeah. So this is another example, the Raspberry Pi 400. So this is basically saying, so you guys in the community already figured out the solution to this by appending, I think it's IRQ poll onto the kernel command line to get it I think to get Linux 5.19 booting on the Raspberry Pi 400, because everything worked on my Raspberry Pi 4, but I don't have
Yeah.
a 400. So that was really cool to see you guys figured that one out for yourselves. I don't know if this will be fixed. This actual problem will be fixed in Linux
What's
6.
What's funny is I actually ordered a Raspberry Pi 400, and I got it, and they sent me one with the wrong keyboard layout. So I sent it back, and I'm waiting to see if they give me my money back. But if they do, I'll probably try and get one. But I'm not really too motivated after that whole thing
Oh dear.
because I
I,
haven't even gotten to work on it yet to see what the deal is. So
hang on, what would you say when you say a keyboard? Would you like?
it was a Spanish keyboard, so it had the question marks
Yeah.
and the enye
Yeah.
and different letters were in different spots.
Oh, you could have
But
given
it
it to
was a
me. I would have given
QWERTY
you a
keyboard, but
US.
it what?
It's a shame you don't live around the corner. We could have done a swap. I'll give you a US one, and I'll have the Spanish one because I haven't got one actually. I've got a French one that I got from Godalming as well.
A
But a
Raspberry
Spanish
Pi
one.
400?
Huh?
It's all built into the keyboard. That's why it's a problem. The port,
Hang
the
on.
Pi 400.
But I thought the Pi 400 was the Pi 400 was just an upgrade to the 4. What are you saying? Is it completely different?
No, they took the Raspberry Pi 4 and put it inside a keyboard, and they
What?
ship it. Yeah.
Sorry, hang on a minute. I'm not okay. This is brand new to me. I haven't even looked. Okay.
And they offer them in like computer kits. And I think the advertisement is it's good for schools and stuff to teach.
Oh.
Yeah. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well, okay. I have to say that's pretty cool. All right.
Yeah.
But no,
But
okay.
you don't know like what's going to be wrong with it in terms of support. So
No. But now I understand the problem with the Spanish key. Right. Okay. Got it. Oh, that's okay. I mean, looking at it though, it looks like a cool idea. I have to say. I've got to say. But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Welcome
It's
to.
like a showstopper when it's the wrong keyboard layout.
Yeah. That's fair enough. But I mean, really, I would just encourage you guys to reach out to Raspberry Pi and say, look, we want to run something other than your operating system. Would you mind perhaps submitting your work upstream? Like, because it's going to make it easier for you guys anyway. And I would imagine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's what everyone else does, has always done. But anyway, yeah, rant over for that. But hopefully all that stuff will get, sorted out eventually. So the Honeycomb stuff.
Oh yeah.
The
So I have been running Slackware on it for about, I don't know, 2 months. And it's been stable. But basically to get it going, you need to use the UEFI firmware from SolidRun, the manufacturer. And then there's already support for EFI partitions in the Slackware installer. So basically as it stands now, you can just grub install itself onto the hard drive
Yeah.
and you can boot it. It's basically in the same position as x86 for Slackware with grub. So
Okay.
you install it manually. But I have plans on working on that further. I just haven't. There's been some problems and personal family problems, so I haven't had time to really sit down and do that yet.
Yeah. No worries. Well, yeah, we'll look at that later on. So I do want to get though one of the Honeycomb machines. So I'm going to reach out to SolidRun and see if they want to donate one to the project, and I can advertise them on the on the website as a thank you. Because those machines are significantly faster. There's the spec is so much greater than the Rock Pro 64. So the Rock Pro 64s are great, and I'm going to use them all for the stable builders and also for current as well. But I want to have a more of a powerful one for the lead build machine, certainly, and maybe even for my home gateway as well at some point. So I can pick up whatever you get working, and it needs to all be automated though. I don't want people having to manually do any grub stuff in the installer. So I can.
I have like a sort of small script that just installs grub from the installer, but I need to polish it more. I don't know. I have to figure out how grub finds installations and automatically adds it into the grub config. So when you reboot, it works, type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but so.
What is that? Just some script work? Is it to change the config?
It's just to so since it doesn't have an SD card in it, the part where about the SD card for the bootloader is just kind of skipped in the installer by default. So I just wanted to have it use the case statement looking for the Honeycomb, device tree model name, and install grub on it if that's what they want. Just like a yes or no, and with a little explanation. It's not really.
Okay. Well, it's going to. Okay. All right. It's going to need to install grub anyway because U-boot doesn't work, right? It's not supporting it yet. So
It does for some reason in Ubuntu, but I can't get it to work with Slackware. I tried to build it many times, and I've just kind of put that on the back burner. But
okay. Yeah, it could be. Depends. Do you know if it is?
Because they use UEFI in their grub or their U-boot build, so it's kind of yeah, it's more complicated than just building U-boot.
Oh, okay. But are you able to boot off of an SD card? So if we got U-boot working on it, because that would be, well, I say it would be the easier path. It might not be. But in terms of having everything already set up to, with the SD card imaging workflow and the configuration of the bootloader with, with the U-boot X Linux config and all that stuff, that's already there. So if we can make U-boot work, is it possible to boot the Honeycomb off of an SD card like we do for everything else?
So it has a way to switch between booting between SD and all the other options with the board, but I just thought it was easier to put the firmware that's shipped by SolidRun and have it boot Slackware instead. Kind of like on your x86, it has UEFI firmware installed.
Yeah,
it's the same deal basically.
But where does the firmware come from? Or rather, where does it live?
It's on one of their FTP sites.
Oh, okay. I mean on the device. So does it boot the firmware off of SD card, or do you have to put it on?
Yeah, it's on the SD card. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite easy actually. It sounds more complicated than it is.
Okay. And then, so the firmware, what else is grub? Does the grub binary get positioned onto the SD card as well? Or where does it find grub?
It goes on to the internal hard drive, whatever kind of media you plug in.
Okay.
And then so it basically just loads grub at the end, or you can go to the boot manager in the firmware and select the partition you want to boot, stuff like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Have you do you have a separate /boot partition on the Honeycomb, on the hard drive?
Yeah, I do.
Do you need? If it doesn't need one, don't put one there.
It stores the EFI bootloader stuff and the just the kernel and stuff. There's nothing else on there. It doesn't have the syslinux stuff or.
Are you able to show me? Do you have the machine booted?
Yeah, I'm sitting next to it with it on. That's why it's so loud.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, I'm curious. Oh, well, actually, I realise we've gone over the hour. Actually, I'll tell you what, we can do that in the next podcast once we've moved forwards a bit with it. We can have a look at how to do that.
Yeah, that's going to be too long if we keep going.
Yeah. It's already been an hour. I didn't realise. My Raspberry Pi 4 rant went longer than expected.
It's okay.
But actually, I've got to say though, I like the idea of this Raspberry Pi 400. I think that's pretty neat. I've got to say.
Well, then you can buy it and do it.
Well, no, I'm really not. Not until they've got their act together with the upstream support. I'm not buying anything else Raspberry Pi. I'm not going to spend my money on that. I'd rather if I was going to buy anything, I'd rather buy something from Pine64, to be honest. Because basically what I'd be doing is I'd be spending my own money, which is now in short supply given the electricity and gas prices, spending on something that actually gives myself a headache. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, an Orange Pi has already come out with an Orange Pi 800. It's the direct competitor with the Pi 400, but it has way more memory.
What is it called? The 400?
Orange Pi 800.
Oh, 800.
Yes.
Is that from Pine64? Is that one of the?
That's it's an Orange Pi.
Oh, it's got the arcade. Ah, that explains why it's got. Okay, so it's got the rock chip 3399.
And
right. I saw some patches for this, I think, in the Manjaro repo. If I remember rightly. It might be. Oh, I see what you mean. It's not only a direct competitor, it looks exactly the same.
It looks the same and it has more memory.
Apart from it's got different coloured keys, perhaps. But other than that, it looks the same. And it has more memory. How much RAM does it have?
6 cores and 4 gigabytes of. Never mind. It's 4 gigs of RAM. I was wrong about that, but.
Okay.
It was the processor that was better.
Okay.
So it's basically a Rockpo Pi or a Rock Pro and a Raspberry Pi 400 case.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, the 3399 Rock chip is the Rock Pro 64 and Pineboard Pro, the one that the SoC it has. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. But it's still only got well. It doesn't really, for me though. It doesn't. It's interesting in the form factor from the point of view that it's. I've got to say, this looks pretty cool actually. I might have to look into this.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know what the support's like because I just had some bad experiences with Orange Pi 2. So,
is this actually by the same company that produced the original Orange Pi Plus 2E that I had on ARM32? It is.
Yeah, it is. They redesigned their website recently.
So
that's why it looks different.
Oh, cool. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Well. All right. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, I've got nothing else on my list. But that's where we are anyway. Yeah, so it's September, and that's where we are. If you've made it through to this far in the podcast, it's October. Did I say September? I did, didn't I? I'm losing track of time here.
We've been talking it so long. It's now November.
It will be soon. Yeah. All right. We should give it a. We should cut it here, I think. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. I hope that's been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this, if you made it so far. And again, if you want to help contribute to the running of the electricity, or rather contribute to paying to power these ARM build machines, that would be great as well. Otherwise, I'm going to be switching them off. Actually, I thought about switching them off, Brent, as well. Obviously, that was the first thing I thought I could just switch them off, I suppose. But the problem is sometimes they won't boot again, because I don't leave every build machine in a good working state. So sometimes I know that, for example, I'm just going to reinstall it. But if I rebooted it, it would crash. But if I reinstall it, it'll be fine, because I play around with them, so I can't assume that they'll ever boot back up again without manual physical intervention. So that's not really an option, is to power them down. Yeah, that's not going to work. But anyway, yeah. Cheers, guys, and we'll see you in the next podcast, whenever that may be. How do I make VirtualBox not virtual full screen? There we go. Cheers, guys. Take care.
Later.